7 o'clock. Do I have a motion to open our meeting?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. We are open. Good evening. This is a meeting of the Finance Committee. It is Thursday, April 24th, 2025. This meeting is being audio and video recorded. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Okay, on the agenda tonight we have two budget hearings. First, we're going to take Old Colony. We have the superintendent from Old Colony, Mr. Aaron Polanski, and Sarah Griffith is also here, the business manager. The floor is yours, Aaron.
Thank you. Thanks for having us. We put together a quick presentation for the Finance Committee and for any viewers watching at home, and I'll take you through that presentation, and then what we can do is turn it over for questions and answers. So I'll begin quickly. We always like to share our mission. Our mission is to prepare and support students for the global demands of society and the workforce through rigorous vocational, technical, and academic courses. This foundation is established within a safe environment that values students' interests, needs, and diversity, fostering responsible, productive citizens in our community. The first slide we want to share with you, and we do this annually, is just a view of application trends. The total Acushnet applications, and this includes residents from private schools as well. You can see the trends from 2018, where we were at 51 students, and up to 2025, where we were at 79. And there was an increase up to about 2023 and a small decrease from 2023 to 2025. I can make this available to everyone as well if you'd like. The admission trends for Acushnet continue here. The total enrollment for FY25 is 190, and the total enrollment for FY26, 194, which is an additional 4 students. Anytime we see a large increase, for instance, Carver had 14 additional students this year, in October, if we see that type of jump, we'll typically call the town administrator and have a conversation for budgeting purposes. This year, there were no red flags. The year before, I did call Jamie. We had a conversation in October so that he could be prepared in advance. But we didn't have any red flags in terms of big jumps or declines this year. The fiscal implications of the FY26 budget, we had long-term debt of over $500,000 that was retired in the FY26 budget, and a vocational instructor was actually cut this year. We cut one instructor because of the budgetary constraints. On February 24th, we met with representatives from all of our member towns and got feedback from them, and as a result, that's why that instructor was cut. We did have a request for a co-op coordinator in the amount of $110,000. That was also cut from the budget request. It was replaced with a request for a $20,000 stipend allocation that will allow us to support our vocational coordinator, but not to the extent of a co-op coordinator. A lot of schools our size have 2 administrators, one that oversees co-op, one that oversees vocational programs. Bethany Vitello is our vocational coordinator and co-op coordinator. She does both jobs, which is usually a 2-person show. The FY26 budget consists of a 4.12% increase, of which 2.93% is attributed to insurance increases. And the reason why I share that is because at the municipal level, insurance is typically included in, or not included in the number that you see, but for us, we carry the insurance. So when you take that insurance out, our increase is a 1.19% increase. That being said, the insurance increases of approximately 19% for active and 22% for retirees are a big portion of this. Inflation associated with supply lines and energy are a big portion. We have a 3% COLA in accordance with the negotiated contracts. And what we do when we negotiate contracts, just so folks that are watching understand this as well, is we do our research. We try to find out what the trends are amongst our member towns as well. As smaller vocational schools of a similar size, we never want to be the highest and we never want to be the lowest. And that's really important to us. We also ask what the municipalities are honoring so that we can stay in a reasonable range. We do the exact same thing with our budget. So you'll see that on the one pager. I will typically reach out to my colleagues to find out where they're falling in terms of their budget planning, because we want to be reasonable, responsible, and receptive to what we're hearing from our member towns. In addition, we do have a request for a $45,000 position. It's an assistant to our Director of Technology. He has worked on his own for as long as he's been in the district. And he's been with us at least since I started, which was about 9 years ago. He's never had assistance, and we want to put something in place to give him a little bit of assistance because we believe it's necessary. Anyone who's in the computer world will understand, maybe Eric specifically, but to be a one-man show in a 9 through 12 high school, even though we're only about 560 students, that's a big ask. I know locally.
Does he have, he has like a tech that helps him.
This would be a tech.
So he
He's
doesn't have
never
a tech
no,
already?
nobody.
So he's just by himself?
By himself.
Okay.
Yeah, so this would be that tech that you're referring to. The other piece was the aforementioned $20,000 stipend allocation, and that's in lieu of the co-op coordinator. So we cut that position when we heard from our member towns. We had hoped to add it this year because we really feel it's necessary. Our co-op numbers have been phenomenal, but we feel like we could still manage it by potentially putting a stipended position in place that will allow Bethany to rethink where she puts her efforts and allow somebody to pick up some of what she does, maybe in other areas that might not be a co-op coordinator. So those are some of the fiscal implications. The proposed budget, just another overview, begins in earnest with the release of the governor's state budget proposal. Her recommendations were released earlier this year. We did not see major increases in Chapter 70 funding. We did, with the recent release of the House numbers, see an estimated 28,000-ish in regional transportation and perhaps another 40,000 in Chapter 70, but none of that's guaranteed, so we don't bank on that until final numbers come through. We've shared our recommendations as part of our draft budget with all of our member towns. We do that as early as we possibly can once the governor releases her numbers. Typically, we'll go to that meeting, we'll receive feedback, and then sometimes we'll hold the number, and sometimes we'll really make some major adjustments. This year, there were some major adjustments made because of the feedback we received. So, of the 5 member towns, there were 2 member towns, call it 2.5, who really expressed a need for us to figure out if we could sharpen our pencil a little bit, and we did. And I think that what we've come up with is a very responsible budget. We tend to be conservative. We were transparent of the entire line itemized sheet so that you can see line by line exactly what we're doing. Luckily, I have Sarah with us tonight. She's the guru. So if there are any intricate questions, I typically turn it over to Sarah. But that's a quick overview. If people have questions, we're happy to answer them.
Thank you, Aaron.
You're welcome.
Just a couple of questions on if you could just elaborate a little bit more about those bullet points that you talked about, specifically your insurance increases. Is that driven by rate increases? How is that? How is it 19% and 22% increase?
So it's a combination of our rate increase with Maya, the group that we are a part of, and our enrollment increasing at the school district itself. So those 2 things are happening.
Okay. And then another question too is what assumptions did you use for the inflation of supplies and energy? I know, especially energy, that's always tough.
So for energy, I always take the current year's trends wherever we're at. And usually I'll do about a 10% increase for electricity and gas. I will say that at Old Colony, since the performance measurement contract was done, which was probably about 12 years ago now, haven't had any major fluctuations in electricity or gas. It was just this past year that I saw things sort of climbing a little bit and said, okay, came to the budget subcommittee and had a conversation about needing to make a change to increase things for next year. I think there are a lot of unknowns right now. We did just get notice from Power Options, who is our joint purchasing contract, that they're issuing us a small rebate for this year because of some of the price increases that they estimated, so we're protected through Power Options, which they've been really great since I've been at the school district. But I do have a 10% increase for next year.
Is that 10% also for supplies too, or?
No, usually supplies are about 3.
Mhm.
And I will always gauge it on the contractor's current pricing. And what the school district has done is if there's an opportunity in the current year's budget to purchase our contract for the next year, we usually will do that too if there's any money remaining in the spring to, re-up your contract for the following fiscal year if we know we're gonna use the vendor every year anyway.
Right,
We'll
no,
try to
that
do
sounds smart.
Yeah.
And then I guess the other question I had was only about the long-term debt retirement.
Yep.
So that's a big amount.
Yes.
If you could just elaborate on that and,
Sure.
and talk a little bit about what that is and how that came to be.
Sure, so the school district had 2 forms of debt. One was a bond and one was a capital lease. The bond was done for roof renovation and science lab. And the capital lease was done for the performance measurement contracts. Those were both done prior to me arriving with the school in 2014. The lease had a 6.25% interest rate with a balloon payment, which was tough. But when I got together with the towns, probably about 10 years ago now, we had a small amount that we were putting aside to save for future payments on that balloon so that the member towns wouldn't have that huge burden, towards the end of it. And the principal payment was about $125,000 a year on the bond. So those 2 forms of debt have expired this year. We do have a line in our budget for OPEB and a line for stabilization. In the budget you have in front of you, you'll see that the stabilization line is increased slightly.
I did, yes,
Our
I
hope
know.
is that, our member towns will support us giving a little bit more to stabilization for future payments on whether it's capital improvements to the school district itself or payments involved in an MSBA project, whatever it may be. We are asking for a small amount of reappropriation from the debt payments that we were making to stabilization funding for the school year.
Sure, so that just got absorbed into any other increases that you may have had throughout the budget?
It did, yes, and everybody knows how that works,
Mhm.
right? So you're trying to do the best you can with what you've got, and, initially when we had put the budget together, we were really hoping to fund stabilization with the full amount
Mhm.
that we have fallen off of our debt. It had been, some town administrators had conversations with us and they said, we really don't like to let debt fall off in budget form because then it creates major fluctuations going forward should you need to acquire debt in the future. And I think that being said, I do think Old Colony has been putting off some major improvements that are needed. And so, the hope is we can kind of give the stabilization fund a little bit of funding here. But the amount of money that the capital lease was $425,000 last year. So capital lease was $425,000 and the principal payment on the bond was $125,000.
I think that's all I had.
I just wanted to make one more note about the budget process, and as Superintendent has mentioned, we are looking at a potential of receiving more funding. So Old Colony, if we receive additional Chapter 70 or Chapter 71, we will use those funds to lower 4th quarter assessment or apply those funds directly to, if it's Chapter 71, the following year's budget, depending on the budget season. The last 2 years, we've lowered 4th quarter assessments for all of our member towns. Anytime we receive additional regional transportation reimbursement or Chapter 70 funding, we will adjust the budget, increase the revenues coming from the state, and decrease assessment. So I just wanted to make everyone aware of that too.
I have a question. First of all, I think it's commendable that you carry the health insurance in your budget. because that's a big portion. Have you explored any other groups besides Maya? Because Maya seems pretty expensive as far as the percentage increase.
So we were part of Gateway Health Group back when I started, and we stayed part of Gateway Health Group for quite a long time until we were entering a year with Gateway that was going to be a 20% increase in health insurance rate premiums, and our staff had only gotten a 1% COLA. And so we took a look at different groups and decided to join Maya. We did not have any plan design change. We do carry a high premium, no deductible, low copay plan, which is a more expensive plan. The insurance subcommittee has discussed plan design change for the future. So that is an option that we will have as part of Maya moving forward.
What's the percentage split?
We have a tiered split. Employees who have been with the school district longer, is a 75-25 split. Then there's a 70-30 split, and there's a 60-40 split. Retirees are also 60-40. So new hires with the school district are 60-40, and retirees are 60-40.
I might be missing it somewhere. Is that the position that was cut, was that through attrition or was it
No.
retired?
It was not through attrition.
Okay,
It was in a vocational shop that had low enrollment,
okay.
and we felt it was the responsible thing to do. It was hard to do because the instructor's a phenomenal instructor. We hate to lose that individual, but it was a decision made based, our job is to run an organization like you would a business in that sense. And when we saw the low enrollment, we said, if this builds back up, maybe we'll add it back in the future, but because of low enrollment in that particular program, we made a decision that that was where the instructor had to come from.
Okay.
So if you go to page 2, it's the shop with a 22% decrease. Right at the bottom of the page. Anywhere else you see a negative in the salary section is savings on hiring from a retiree.
And I guess this is just more of a curious question about food service. Your cafeteria manager is in the budget, and I mean, to me, that's just a little bit different, because we usually see those in the food service revolving fund, but I don't know if that's something different being a vocational school or.
No, it's just when I got there, that's how it was. Honestly, the director has always been part of the operating budget for the school district. I didn't bring her into it, it's just always been that way. When I started in 2014, I had a very open and honest conversation with my predecessor, and he said, our food service program is in the negative right now, we're operating in the negative. And I hit the ground running with my food service. She's the director now, she was the manager then. And I said, we need to talk about this, we need to figure out what's going on with your program, because, you're in a deficit. So we meet once a week, we have since 2014, and she's brought the program into at least the black. I would love for her program to be able to support her salary. I do think that we are getting closer. So that might be something for the future that you see coming out of our budget.
Yeah, food service
She's done a great job.
programs have benefited over the past few years. with
Yeah,
the reimbursements and.
For sure, because
And-
during COVID, we were receiving, the extreme economic disadvantage rate, which we would have never received being where we are.
Right.
And so there's been some things we've been able to do. We don't have a very large fund balance right now. It's about $120,000. That is
And I know
not,
participation is tough for high school students.
although we have great participation, and I will say that, she's very creative. We make all of our own food, really from scratch, and the kids love it, and so enrollment's not bad. But I wouldn't want to take something that's been in the operating budget out of the operating budget and put it to that grant unless we were 100% sure that we were going to be able to fund it. But we do consider our program to be quite a success over the last 10 years, for sure. We're proud of it.
That's good.
I had a question regarding the transportation fund offset.
Sure.
Last year it appeared like it was 350,000 and then this year is zero.
Yep. So as we just talked about, that's Chapter 71, Regional Transportation Reimbursement. We build a budget based on the cherry sheet, which is an estimate. If we receive more money than what's on the cherry sheet, we apply it to the following year's budget, which is what you're seeing there, that 350,000. As of right now, we are not receiving any additional funds in Chapter 71. If we do, we will apply them to fourth quarter assessments, which we've also done, or the following year's operating statement. So it's a Mass General Law that is available to regional school districts that receive Chapter 71 aid. You can either use it in the current fiscal year, lower fourth quarter assessments, or you can put it in the revolving fund for the following fiscal year and apply it towards the budget. And I do believe I drafted an email as well in response to that question because I was not able to attend the select board meeting because I was unwell. That fund is Mass General Law regulated. You cannot have a balance in your regional transportation revolving fund for more than one fiscal year.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Who provides the school security?
We have an SRO that is appointed through the Rochester Police Department,
Okay.
and then it's a shared cost with an offset for the time that that person is not working the 180-day school year. That's picked up by the town of Rochester.
Town pays for it.
What's the split on that?
So it's
20%?
it's the full year minus 180. The 180 is prorated based on the salary of that individual.
I'd say it's about 60-40, maybe 70-30.
I think it's closer to, yeah, I think it's closer to 70.
180 days of a 260-day year, so 70-30, about that.
Excuse me, I have a question. So on top of your new director assistant, I noticed there's a $31,000 increase in contracted services for technology. Can you explain that?
The contracted services for technology are directly related to the cost of those contracts that we have right now. So we have the Raptor software that came in last year. That's school security, so that we're scanning IDs when they come in the building. That was about $10,000 a year. And we also have Frontline, which is a time and attendance system and an absence management system.
Okay.
That there is about $15,000 a year. We implemented that last year. And the remainder of that $33,000 increase is each contracted service that we're using for the building. So you're
licensing and
talking
that kind of
student
thing.
management software, firewall, my general ledger accounting software, TeachPoint, our evaluation, which is our evaluation software for teachers, any contracted service that's used building-wide.
Okay, thank you.
If you're really interested, I can get you a list. I don't know.
Okay, I was just curious. It's a little bit of a bump there, so, okay, thank you.
Sure.
How often do we see that transportation fund offset at zero? Is that like uncommon?
I'm trying to think back honestly because the regional transportation reimbursement offset account started coming to us when the state started reimbursing at around 80%. That was the first year. I want to say it was probably about 5 years ago that began.
Okay.
There was a jump, there was a leveling. We're hoping there's another jump, but there
Yeah.
was a leveling.
Yeah.
And that leveling is indicative of the lack of differential, if that makes sense.
The other piece to that money is because the school districts, we're contracting our transportation. And we changed the way that we were handling non-resident tuition. So because we were no longer taking Freetown students, and we were taking in-district students to replace those spots, every year we've had an incremental increase in transportation expense, equaling a bus, an entire bus. when I file the end of year report and I tell the Department of Education how much money we're spending, they're catching up 1 year behind. My actual compared to their estimated. So if they don't know, there's no way for them to know we're adding buses until after we've already spent those funds. So part of that regional transportation reimbursement fund being so much over the last few years has been us adding 1 bus to our fleet for 3 years straight, which now we will not add any more buses to our fleet. I do not expect to see a large, there's been some conversation at the state level about potential for 100% reimbursement. If that happens this school year, the town of Acushnet will see that money return to them. If it happens next school year and they actually budget for it and they give us a projection on a cherry sheet that looks reliable, you know, it will go towards next year's revenue source. So that's like, you'd see that now if I knew it was happening, but I can't guarantee it.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it would be, in a perfect world, it would be nice if we had more local aid to go around,
Yeah.
right? I mean,
Right?
everybody's feeling the effects of that.
Yeah.
And I blame what happens with some of that stuff, with some irresponsible spending that goes on at the state level.
Yeah. I mean, if you look at the town of Acushnet's minimum local contribution, it's up $210,000. So that is on one of your sheets that you have there, but that right there is the state's assessment on the town of Acushnet's ability to fund education at Old Colony. $210,000 is the increase for your budget for this next year. So of your, total assessment increase, $210,000 the state is saying is minimum local.
Mhm.
But we would share your sentiments, Doc. On the executive board for MASS, there's been some very aggressive advocacy to rethink the Chapter 70 formula.
Yeah, because it's like.
Because it needs to be looked
Yeah,
at.
it doesn't work.
No, it doesn't work. And even when we're looking at the MSBA funding, to build a vocational school versus a traditional high school, the reimbursement rate, right now, there's no differential. But when you look at the cost per square foot to build one versus the other, there should be a differential. So we've put forth legislation to advocate on that level as well.
That's good, because for a project that size, I feel like the current administration just keeps putting more and more on the back of the taxpayers.
Right.
And at some point, people are gonna be fed up with this stuff.
Right. There's only
I
a
know,
finite
right?
amount that people can do.
Yeah, I mean, they waste millions and millions of dollars on a bunch of and I'm not gonna get into all that. I could, but I'm not gonna, because I wanna, keep things on point. But you know what I'm talking about. It's just,
yeah.
it's wasteful, irresponsible spending, and the leadership, the lack of leadership is horrible. It really comes down to common sense. I think the schools should have more of the local aid, because then there's less of a burden on the taxpayers.
Right.
I don't get it, but hopefully the voters will get it at some point. Does anybody else have any questions? Lisa, do you have any questions?
Can I guess just to ask Sarah clarification on something. The technology coordinator isn't on this budget before, was it an allocation thing, just a different account?
Yep, so the Department of Education end of year report dictates how I build the budget. So you'll see that the technology coordinator salary has been moved from a 1,000 series number to a 4,000 series.
Okay. And did you guys add an English teacher? That one went up 70,000 or so?
No, so any change in salaries are actual salaries, so whether they're lane changes or step changes. I believe that English, we had a teacher that, it's kind of complicated. Our
Actually,
English teacher and our social studies teacher.
We had a split position,
Splitting
but now it's
positions.
categorized as English
Okay.
instead of a split position, so that's where you're seeing it.
You actually see a
basically.
savings in hiring in the social studies line.
I did see that, yes.
Yeah,
So
so
those
that's the
two
flip, that's the
are-
flip, because
it's a
that
teacher
person's dual
allocation.
certified.
Okay.
It just happened to be categorized there because of the shift.
Okay.
That was how the person was teaching before. So it's changing going forward. And so our finances have to align with our EPIM reporting so that Department of Education knows where everybody is and what they teach.
For the PD expenses, I mean, granted, dollar-wise, it's not that much, but it's larger, on the larger side percentage-wise. Is there any reason for the increase in some of the PD? I see travel and conferences increased as well as just general PD. Is there something certification-wise or anything like that?
So
that's
just for
coming up?
clarification, the professional development line pays for the actual professional development. So you put in a purchase order and you request to go somewhere after you've gotten permission from your supervisor, that's where we actually pay for that conference room from. The travel and conferences travel line is actually travel reimbursement. So that would be if someone requests mileage reimbursement, food reimbursement, parking reimbursement, if they come back and they request a reimbursement after they've already attended a professional development. That could also include if they paid for their hotel room themselves. I will say just from a perspective of purchasing, it is expensive to travel. You know, it's,
So general
yeah.
cost increases are driving the increase in that.
I also
in
would
that
say
line.
that from the perspective of, you know, just processing all of it, since COVID, there's an interest in people getting back out into the world and having professional development and being with each other again. And, you know, during COVID, we actually cut the professional development budget because people weren't going and doing as many things. But I don't know if Mr. Plansky wants to add anything.
You know, I think
Professional
actually,
development.
given that you come from the world that we live in,
Yeah.
I think you have a fundamental understanding of the power of like the MASBO conference or things like
Sure,
that,
sure.
right? So
Right.
within reason, we encourage it, but I think that you know,
I'm
that
just wondering
particular piece.
what, if there was a reason for the change from year to year, and it sounds like it was just simply,
Combination.
you know, cost increase in everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, nothing exorbitant.
I think I just have one more question, and it goes back to the debt service,
Okay.
because maybe I'm just not understanding this that good.
Okay.
So with the debt service being reduced by about 500,000, correct?
Yes.
Where, I would expect the budget to be decreased almost by the same amount, correct?
So it just goes to, so if we have salary increases of $380,000 and a debt increase of $500,000, that nets to an overall increase of $120,000, you know, I think it'd be $120,000. So what I'm saying is, if you have a debt decrease of $500,000 and a wages increase of $300,000, that's a $200,000 net increase to the budget. So basically, the decrease in debt has captured the increase in our other expenses so that we do not have to increase our budget even more. It's a temporary fix for a solution, long-term solution. Everyone's in the same position right now.
And 25-26 is the last year of the current teacher contract.
So that's a good, I was gonna ask that too.
It's when you look at the cycle, you know, I knock on wood and always say maybe there's someone looking over our shoulder, because that, you know, when you think from a planning perspective, that debt falling off was a blessing, because that 3% that was negotiated, at the time it was negotiated, we thought was a very generous number. I still think it's a very generous number. However, I have trepidation when I hear stories about local groups negotiating higher than that. I really think it's important to contemplate the impacts, not only of what you do on a local level, but the ripple effect of that. And so that's why we pay such close attention when we're in the midst of these processes, to see that we are not the highest, we don't want to be the lowest, but from a retention perspective, we want to be somewhere in the middle and still be able to hold on to people.
And from a budgeting perspective, our wages are our biggest expense.
Right.
Everyone's in the same
I get
situation
that,
there,
yes.
so.
Yes. Mr. Kelly, did you have?
Couple. First question is, when Kristen was talking about the revolving fund for the culinary program, And
Cafeteria.
you were talking how you've,
The cafeteria?
yeah,
Okay.
you moved it from the red to the black.
Yep.
Other revolving funds, what are the balances like in those? Do you have other revolving?
Yes, of course we do. Yeah, I mean, we're a regional school district, so we do have restricted revolving funds, of course. Like, do you have a specific question on one, or?
No, I want to know, oh, I'll tell you what, why don't you send me a report on the balances in all of them, and then I'll
Okay.
ask the question. And my second question is, as you know, we got an email today about the certification of E&D, and what are your plans for that $315,000?
Normally, we use our E&D to buy pieces of capital equipment.
But now you're going into a major new school.
We don't know if
We
we're
don't
getting
know if
a
we
new
are or
school.
we aren't, but what we do know is that we definitely have capital expenses. And over the last 9 years anyway, you will see a minimal number of capital requests that have ever come to our member towns
via budgeting.
via budgeting, because oftentimes at the end of a school year, when we see E&D, obviously there are opportunities to ensure that that source can be utilized for something of that nature.
Are you going to use it for capital expenditures now, or are you going to wait and find out if the process for the new school goes through?
Everything that we purchase at the school, any piece of equipment, is going to that new school. We have an advisory committee that meets twice a year. They put together a spiral plan of capital improvements and equipment needs in our building. There are shops that are in dire need of new equipment. So we will not be waiting on using E&D.
So that'll go to equipment purchases?
Some of it, but I don't know if you looked at the report. 5% of Old Colony's operating budget is $700,000. We have $300,000 of E&D. So that's not something that we should exhaust, because if something happens at the school district and there's an emergency, that is what the school committee can use to help fix that, so that we don't have to come back to our member towns and ask for more funding. So we will be using a portion of our E&D. We usually try to leave at least $150,000 in our E&D in case there's an emergency situation at the school. Then we will look to our advisory committee meeting minutes to see where equipment is needed. And if there's flexibility enough to do that at this time. But when I see that report and I see that 5% of our operating budget is $700,000 and we have $300,000 of E&D, I would think that we would want to, be careful about what we're doing. If something breaks in our school building, that's our fund to go to for an emergency.
Second is, or third is not a question but a comment. And the comment is, I understand you don't want to be, and I feel this way for what we're doing in the town too. You don't want to be the lowest, you don't want to be the highest as far as when you're negotiating contracts. Well, I don't think that luxury is here anymore. And a 3% increase is exorbitant.
It's not exorbitant 3 years ago if you run a comparative
No,
analysis.
I still
When
think
we
it
negotiated
is.
that contract and I ran a comparative analysis, that was not exorbitant. And I can show you the literature that we collected.
Oh, I
Because
agree
Bristol
with
Plymouth-
you, but
Bristol Plymouth negotiated a
you can't look at
4%.
comps anymore. You cannot look at comps. You have to look at the ability of the people to pay. And
Well, you could say
and
that
the
you can't
ability
look
to
at
pay
you could
is-
say you can't look at comps, but your teachers won't tell you that you can't look at comps. And so it's important that as a group, when you're having conversations, as a superintendent cohort and amongst business managers, that you enter into dialogue and talk about what best practices look like, so that you don't, to your point, you don't end up in exorbitant places. But I can tell you from all of the homework that we did, and it included police and fire, because you sent us Acushnet Police and Fire, and they were in the middle of an unresolved contract at the time. And I can tell you for sure, we looked at every municipality, we looked at every police and fire department, we looked at every set of teachers across the board, the South Coast, not just vocational.
Oh.
And we made a decision that was not exorbitant. So my job is to speak on
I
behalf.
disagree with you, and I will say that it was exorbitant. It's been exorbitant across the whole labor market right now.
Well, if you
The
say across the
people
labor
can't-
market, that's different, but I don't think that
The
in fairness to
people
Old
can't afford
Colony,
to pay for it.
I think in fairness to
What was the
Old
whole
Colony,
three-year contract? I mean, that's kind of.
what'd you say?
What was the whole, was it a 3-year contract?
It was
Yeah.
333, and before that, I believe it was a
211.
211, which is
Yeah.
not exorbitant at all.
Didn't even cover the increase on our health insurance for our teachers.
Right. It doesn't cover the cost of living increase. So when we're looking at inflation, and inflation is far surpassing, your contractual COLAs, in my head, I think to myself, you feel like you're in a bit of a catch-22. But I do think that we've been fiscally responsible and dutiful in the work that we've done, and we've done our homework. Nothing has been random.
I agree with you. Everybody's looked at the comps. The comps don't matter anymore. The taxpayers can't afford the money.
I hear what you're saying. I understand what you're saying. I think we're probably saying the same thing.
For all, not just education.
Right. I just didn't want someone to perceive that as Old Colony being irresponsible.
No.
Old Colony is not irresponsible. Old Colony is amongst the most transparent group of people you'll ever meet, and our school committee drives that.
I agree. We've talked a number of times. It's just that now it's gotten to the point
Well, I
that
think
the
we're- I think we're talking
taxpayers
about just the
cannot
general
afford.
economic environment that we're in overall.
Sure, and it's a
And
bigger,
that's, I think
like
he's
we said, it's a
referring-
bigger problem.
He's referring
Chapter
to a lot of
70 is a.
that. And it's just, I think maybe it's unions in general that are putting unrealistic demands on the municipalities. Based on their ability, they just assume that, okay, well, they're gonna be able to pay this all the time, but the taxpayers might not be able to. So, I mean, you got some towns resorting to Proposition 2.5 overrides to fund their operational budgets. And that's not gonna happen in this town. I mean, it's becoming more commonplace in some of the wealthier districts throughout the Commonwealth.
It's a
But,
no-no.
yeah, you can't do that.
No,
I mean,
not at
that's-
all. Even our ESSER funds, nothing went to operational.
But it's,
Because they said we'd end up in a pothole, right?
Yeah.
So I think, like, from that perspective, when we talk about this, and I understand what Jamie's saying, and I think he's right, that the days of a 3 need to be over, because it's not sustainable. Even when we were in the midst of that, and we were looking at comps, we understood the nature of the ask, we also understood the nature of the impact. And so that's a very difficult piece to articulate when you're sitting across the table from people. I will say we've been blessed because we're not the highest, and people don't leave to go next door.
Well, if you're
when
not
there are
looking at the
vacancies.
comps, yeah, you're gonna lose.
Right.
You're gonna lose
So,
staff, especially in the
more
traffic
than-
of the last
Everywhere.
years.
More than
Yeah,
half
but
of our
that's
teachers,
the way it has to be.
more than half of our teachers are at top step. If you have a teacher that's at top step and you give them a 3 and they're making $90,000 a year, that means they've got a $2,700 increase for the year. Let's think about what our economy has done over the last 3 years. I think that we had tried to do the best we could to do right by our staff. And those top step teachers are very valuable in our building.
And our towns. It's a balance.
Some of them are taxpayers here.
I think the balance is gone now, and it's what the taxpayers can afford.
I mean, you were right about the economy being horrible for the past, I'd say 4 years. Hopefully it gets better. I don't have a crystal ball, but, I don't believe it can get any worse than it was. And I'll stand by that, So, but, your 1.19% increase, taking out the health insurance, so that's, I can't ask you to do any better than that at this point. I mean, it's the the contractual things that we have no control over. And anyway, does anybody else have any questions? Aaron, Sarah, thank you for coming in tonight.
Thank you.
Appreciate
We
it.
appreciate it.
Thank you for all the
Appreciate it.
information.
Thank you
And,
for
you
your
know,
work.
it is
Yes,
very
and I-
difficult.
If any questions come up, we are
Yes.
always happy to ask.
And I know,
We're an open book, so
and
we'll
I
send it
will
over.
share the sentiment that you guys are always transparent
Yes.
with us. And, you know,
Yeah.
we've asked our own
true.
school district to model what you've provided us in the past. So yes, you guys are
I think our
transparent.
job's to hang a sign on it, right? Just, here's what it is, and,
Yes.
and when people come to us, Peter was at the meeting on February 24th, and he said, we can't do this. So we went back and we sharpened our pencil by quite a bit, and so we respect and understand where he was coming from. He was not alone, Acushnet was not the only town in that situation.
Yeah, so we
I'll
appreciate it.
articulate that
We
also.
Appreciate it.
You know, so anytime you come to us and say, can you do better, if we can, we will.
Thank you.
Thank you both.
Thank you, we appreciate it.
Like 45 minutes, that wasn't too bad.
Too bad you're not an enterprise fund.
Yeah.
I'm gonna get Steve up here so he can get home and get some sleep.
Nah, he'll stay up all night.
Isn't it, you don't have a bunker at the place down there to sleep in?
Pitch a tent down there.
My wife put a kibosh on that a long time.
Time you get up, 3?
Excuse me?
Were you there for 3?
No, I live 40 minutes away from Acushnet, so I usually get up at
Thanks again, Aaron.
2:30,
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
We'll see you.
2:30, 3 o'clock. I'm in the office by 4:15. So I gotta get my work done, you know, and it's easier for me to do that before everybody shows up.
Yeah.
All right, gentlemen, the floor is yours. You want to be out of here no later than 8:30, right?
I'll be out here in 5 minutes.
Okay. Okay, that's even better.
I'm the cost
All right,
center.
so
and
you guys are on the
make
clock.
money, so.
Yes. You guys are on the clock.
7:50, we're out of here.
You train your first round?
It's gonna talk in draft terms.
We want to thank you guys for seeing us this evening to review this. I think we've given you a copy of our projected budget.
Yes.
If you notice, you have the 2026 request and then the 2026 committee request. There was a, I think one is the town hall version, if I'm not mistaken, and then
2026 request is the town hall version.
yes. And the 2026 committee request is the golf committee, along with Stephen and myself. We have a pretty straightforward budget. The salaries increase are union negotiated. I think 2% is what they've gone up. I had an increase in clubhouse employees, a slight increase in that. As rounds have gone up, we've had concerns and interest in offering more services, so we've had increased ranges, increased bag boys, increased staff in the pro shop to answer phone calls and process those rounds, as well as having additional staff available for outings. We've pretty much hit a max capacity since COVID, so it's been a grind on the workers, myself as Steve's staff included. We added a clerical position. You'll notice that one for the 22,000. That we didn't use that as of yet for this fiscal year that we're currently in, but I just hired a person and they are in training for the upcoming year. So we're going to try and use a lead clerical person in the pro shop and then give some assistance to her to answer phones and book tea times and book outings and whatnot. Try to get myself out of the mix on the daily basis, as well as Isaac. Let us function more as managers, managing the business hands-on, directing business. He can handle more lessons and clinics and you know, talk to the starters and ranges and process the business in that format. Looks like we've increased a little bit on the treasurer collector. That's not anything that we do, and we've also had an indirect cost increase on the salaries for the accountant. That again is not anything that we've implemented. Sure, we'll speak to that in a little bit.
That 8,625 for the accountant had not shown up in the budget in previous years. That was something that was just been added in that 2026 request column. And you also notice in other portions of the budget that there's some line items that have blanks in them. There's long been a discussion about indirect costs, whatever they are, associated with an enterprise fund. And you can see on the second page that there was a series of costs that are basically outside of Dana and my control or influence that was listed under direct costs. And that's why you see some blanks in some other places that don't normally in the past
Right.
have had blanks.
Fringe benefits, maintenance employees, Medicare, those are blank, and we've incurred now, we're separating out, it appears we're separating out a plan for indirect costs on the operation, which has been a discussion for some years with the golf committee and Steve and myself, as well as the town admins that have come through. And it's always been our vision and viewpoint. Let us get to the finish line, pay off the bond, and then, of course, this is the town's entity, so at some point, there will probably be some flexibility with regards to what is incurred and what isn't incurred, but an indirect cost, it's my understanding, that's an optional cost put on by the town to the enterprise fund. So we're trying to decipher what are the basis of the costs, what is the breakdown of the cost, and how are they applied to the golf course. I think as we progress and grow and develop the program, it shouldn't be a catch-all that you can kind of just, you know what I mean, if you need some space on the general fund to, you know, incur for the golf course, the enterprise fund, to incur additional indirect costs unnecessarily. If they're valid and, you know, they need to be done, then so be it. By all means, it's a town entity, but it should be transparent, should be an open lines of communication. We should all understand how it's being applied and for what reasons, and then everybody can kind of decipher and agree where those
There's always
costs.
been discussion on indirect costs, but, you know, I'm pretty good at math, and alls I would ask is that I have no problem with indirect costs, obviously, as part of the process, but somebody explain to me the process through which they're calculated.
Right.
So when I look at indirect costs, I can determine if it may have gone up substantially or may be insufficient or so on, and at least pass comment on it. We've never, and I don't think the golf committee has ever said that they're not, you know, in favor of bearing indirect cost burdens, but we have never had them identified exactly and figured out mathematically, and that math shown to us so we understand the process.
Right. We usually we discuss our budget, Steve and I come to our numbers, we sit down with the golf committee, we review those numbers, maybe make some adjustments, and then we submit them for approval to the golf committee, and that's that. Then we submit them to you guys, you authorize them, and then we submit them to the town hall, where sometimes upon coming to know our numbers and what our budget is, when the munis report is printed, they're a little bit different than what was submitted. So all we're looking for is, you know, upfront transparency. Let us know what we're dealing with, and so we can, because unlike the school department or any other entity within the town, fire, police, this is a business, and we're trying to operate it like a business. So you can't have, you know, surprises. You got to know what you're dealing with so that you can make the appropriate decisions to move forward and adjust and pivot when you need to. That's all.
You just made a good comment, that it's operating as a business. And so, from my perspective, so in the private sector, when you're running a business, you're carrying all these expenses in your budget, health insurance, you're gonna pay for that for employees, unemployment, we're carrying all that, not pension in the private sector.
Well, we have always had health insurance
Right.
and unemployment
those
as
indirect
a factor
costs.
of the budget.
Yes.
Right, so there's been some that have been added, I understand.
Medicare was added last year at a certain percentage of total payroll. My question is, our Medicare expense goes up somewhat, probably not significantly, by the addition of, you know, the additional $8,600
So your
for an account.
question is, you wanna see like You want to see it quantified.
I just don't know how,
How was derived.
I'm not, I think, I'm in favor of bearing my burden.
Sure.
I just don't know how it's calculated.
We're-
I mean, we've had numbers thrown at us as big as $100,000 to $200,000, and I'd say, okay, please explain that, because you can't walk into a budget that's calculated based on needs and then throw another $200,000 on top of it and say, have a nice day. Or throw $200,000 to $100,000 on it and reduce those other areas that have a direct impact on your capability to generate revenue.
Right. And
So,
how it's
what's,
gonna
you
come
know-
down to is, let's say the business isn't as successful due to weather or whatever, or a turn in the economy, we go into a recession. We usually sit down, and if the economy turns and we're strapped, we have to go through our line items and cut stuff. But if we're gonna continue to add
What
indirect
we're not
costs that
gonna
we can't touch, well, now you just kind of, you know what I mean? You could head into a tricky situation, that's all.
The easy answer to the question is we just need to understand
That's
how
right.
to calculate.
And now you're feeling the pain of what it's like to run a private business.
Well, I gotta be honest
it
with
can
you.
be- it can be a
The
nightmare.
pain of running a municipality is actually more than running a private, because there are so many rules and regulations and restrictions that if you're a private business and you're making money, you can use that capital and build your business in other areas in other ways if you needed to.
Okay,
In a
that's fair,
municipality,
fair point.
you can't. These are your line items. This is how you operate. If it's a successful year and your food and beverage are off the charts, you can't spend any more than what you got. And on the flip side of it, if it's not going so well, I mean, you can cut back, but it's a little bit trickier than you think.
Dan,
It
we
would-
have
it
a
would just
question
help.
from the
David,
audience.
David, you want to add something?
I just wanted to say, from my perspective as the chairman of the committee, I've never been averse to what I call like direct indirects, meaning an actual cost that the town had to bear on behalf of the golf course, right? So Medicare tax is new, but it's a cost. It's 1.45% of your payroll. It's a fixed percentage. You know, health insurance. Okay, if somebody on the golf course, worker, takes health insurance, you have to actually come back. But it shouldn't be in there if nobody's taking it. I guess that's the whole point. So the
Well,
one
if it's
thing I didn't-
inappropriately attributed to the enterprise fund, wouldn't that be a whole nother issue?
And then my other thing is this, like, this new one coming out of nowhere, $8,600 for the accountant to help offset that salary. I mean, this is an attempt to bring in, setting a new precedent, putting something new in there. The accountant is going to exist whether or not the golf course exists. So that's where I look at this, the golf course does not affect the town accountant's office or the town accountant's salary. So why are we all of a sudden out of nowhere having $8,600 attributed to the golf course for the town accountant?
I'll be glad to,
You should be glad, Jamie, there's never been a discussion at all with the golf committee about incurring any costs that are not direct costs to the operation.
I'll be glad to let them pay for accounting services in a private accountant, provided we contract with it, and and have it not go through our accounting office. But I'm sure just for an accountant to walk through the door, a CPA would, before he even did any computation, would cost quite a bit more than the accountant's services that we do and everything.
Well,
I don't think we wanna go down that path.
Like, how are these numbers derived, I guess?
Right, I guess what I was thinking is,
Yeah.
you both were talking is that,
I
it doesn't
think,
appear that there's an indirect cost agreement. Is that fair enough to say? Is
That's
that fair to
the
say?
beginning, and once you have an indirect cost agreement, that
Correct.
you don't have that
certain
with
costs
an
Right,
have to
enterprise
be
account.
borne, then how are they calculated? I mean, I can sit here and tell you exactly how I calculated my pesticide budget, my fertility budget, my employee budget, every other item on this sheet.
'Cause- And again, every, department may be different, private enterprise may be different, but, speaking from experience in schools, where we take indirect costs, is heavily regulated. We'll take it from grants and the school lunch fund, but there are rules and there's a process and how it's applied, so.
For
So
example,
I'm not sure if that is applicable to the golf fund.
well,
or-
it isn't,
or if it could
it
be
isn't
modeled,
under the
if it
law,
could
as
be
you know, because
something-
your regulations are
Correct.
different.
But
But
it
for
could be
example, one individual, 8,132,088 for health insurance. Another individual, 23,342.11. These are the costs to the town.
Of
Another individual, 8,132.88, for a total of
So
39,507.
this is golf employees,
Yes.
health insurance. So, I mean, I think.
Premiums were that
when-
much, Jamie?
When
Yes.
someone said that.
The premiums?
For,
Or are you talking claims?
no, I'm saying that's what the town has to pay for each one of those individuals.
Over $30,000?
Yeah,
Well, how
For-
many individuals? What? There
How
was
many are
three-
getting insurance?
There was
3?
three people?
yeah.
So there was.
Remember, we
I
pay
can
60,
tell you in my department who's getting insurance.
remember,
We have 2 singles and 1
it's
family, I believe.
it's 60%, we get 60% cost,
So I think, I
the
mean, I think
annual cost.
if I'm hearing correctly, that the question or the, concern wasn't such that, okay, you're paying for the employee's health insurance because they are an employee of the golf department or golf.
Well,
But I think the concern was more, how is that derived? Maybe not so much the health insurance, but some of the other costs perhaps, if, like,
Well,
for
the
example,
P&C
how is it allocated?
P&C insurance, we went to the providers, they gave us the division. You will see coming in, the sewer and water are the same. They're getting charged that.
Well, again,
Like-
the question was, yes, we have people who take health insurance.
Right.
And we pay for health insurance. And we've always paid for health
Right,
insurance.
it used to be in the fringe benefits line item for
There's only been a few
42.5.
people who've actually taken it. 75% of my staff are retired. Of the remaining 25%,
It's the
15%
exact
are high
cost.
school students.
Seems to me
It's
that
exact-
it's
They're not
getting
paying
pulled from
anything
one
for
area
any
and
of
just
those.
being split out. It's what
No,
it is.
it's the exact cost
I can see that.
Yeah,
to the town.
If it's the
60%
exact
of
cost,
30.
then it's the exact cost.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah,
everybody
and
has health insurance taken out.
For
of the budget.
example, the liability for liquor costs
I mean,
$4,900.
because they're selling beer, right?
That's on top of,
And you're not selling beer in the town hall, so obviously that.
no,
I
but
don't
that's
think
on
you
top
are-
of everything. Everything was broken
Maybe
out.
that's an angle.
I just, in regards to, because we don't really need to discuss the dead horse much longer. In regards to indirect costs, if we simply had an explanation of how they were calculated,
Sure.
would make the
That's all
understanding
we
of
ask.
the process significantly easier.
Jamie,
I mean, I find it hard to believe that our
That's
insurance
fair enough.
costs were.
Who can provide that to them?
Well, first of all, I'll have to ask if it's going to be the policy of the Board of Selectmen to provide to anybody that. If we provide to one, we have to provide to all. And so I'll just have to ask them, but as you can see, I can go right down the list.
They can't just say, you can't just say that person A costs this much because they have this coverage, person B costs this
No,
much.
I wouldn't be able to do that because of HIPAA.
Yes, he's right about that.
HIPAA doesn't apply to a non-medical professional.
For the insurance, but for their
It
insurance.
does for
But you
the
have a- you have a
insurance.
name attached to the.
I don't know, I
But
mean,
if
my
you
wife's
said
been in the
you
insurance
had
business for
three
45 years and she.
employees
How about
at
we
the
went
family
A, B, and
plan
C
equals
person?
3 times, whatever equals,
Right.
something like that, I
Yeah.
guess.
I mean, how much is it up this year that this is like?
No, it's just the treasurer went up a little bit, and it's gone up. If you look back to 2022 was 4,800, and now it's 8,500. And then you have your salary for your accountant at 86.
I do understand the treasurer because you probably bring in a lot of cash or a lot of deposits, so it's taking up a
No, we
chunk
do all that.
more than.
We
Do
do
you
all
make your
that,
own
and
deposits?
No, but you bring it in and we have to spend time.
no, I process it. I'm the nightly closer, so I
No, but
do
you
the GL
bring it in
summary.
and then it has to be redone in
Right,
the
you turn it over
Sure.
to the treasurer's
Right.
office.
And for example,
Well, we
even
don't have a bookkeeper.
ordering the books for the passes
Mhm.
goes through the treasurer's office.
No, I order them. I order them, I pick them up, I deliver them, and she counts them.
Yeah. But
Which is the way I
process it.
want it, because I want to ensure the inventory I bring in the closed box, I go, these are the books we just bought. When I come and get them, You will account for the inventory of them as I take them and sign them out.
All right, so you made a good point. You said you don't have a bookkeeper. So that's a cost that you're not accruing, so the town's taking care of that.
No, this is what I'm saying. I do the bookkeeping and give them all the finished paperwork at the end of the night.
And then it's
They then
all
take it and put it
redone.
themselves.
All right, so they still have to do a service with it at that point.
Sure.
You're not operating a business.
I'm not?
You're operating an enterprise fund in the public sector.
So I guess, you know.
Anyhow, I guess the general format of the discussion, or the reasoning for the discussion is just to be transparent, let us, manage the business, identify where the indirect costs are, what they're going to be, and help us help you.
So how much, I guess, what's helpful for us to know is how much did they change from last year to this year? Like, what was the change? Because it's a little difficult, because I think they're in some areas maybe and not others.
Yeah, there's 53,000 and change. You can see fringe benefits and Medicare.
Yep.
And there is some other places that insurance was 32,000.
53,000, that's 87.
So we're looking at 80-something.
So Jamie,
85.
I got a question. So
I brought it out there and put it transparent this year.
what indirect costs did they have last year, and what's the difference, the increase in the
Right,
indirect
that's what
costs
I'm
this
trying
year?
to.
Well, I'm just saying, last year, it was around 87,000.
87,000.
Total?
Of the
Yeah.
indirect costs that they carried last year.
Yeah,
So now it's
it might
93?
be more, it could be a little bit more, I'd have to look at it.
All right, so it's gone up about $6,000, seven, year to year.
Plus the accountant.
Okay, so 15,
Yes. Well,
Okay,
and,
so
and
15,000.
to also, this is also the preliminary, right? As soon as you open the door to indirect costs, then once the door is cracked, every year it's gonna creep. So we're just trying to nip this in the bud, come to an understanding, and so, we can discuss it.
Well, I don't see why it's unreasonable to ask for an articulation or to say that would.
Well, first of all, that language of nipping it in the bud, when you consider you work for the Board of Selectmen, is a wrong way to say it.
Well,
Let's not twist
we're
it.
spending a lot of time on a
It's a figure
portion of the
of speech.
budget that we don't directly.
Nip it in the bud as far as to address the fact that it's not being addressed, that's all. The communication portion of it. Obviously, it's going to incur, we just said, we understand that it's going to take place. We just want open lines of communication, that's all.
all right, so look, I just want to say a couple more things on this. So you already were aware of the indirect costs, most of them from last year anyway.
Correct.
So you expected all those back again, and there was a couple more that were added. Was it communicated to you the best way? Maybe it wasn't, and that could be something that
We
could be
met
improved.
multiple times with them.
So, I don't know, have it in writing, whatever needs to be done, so there's clarification,
Well, it's very easy.
Yeah.
We could take it out of the enterprise
that kind of
fund,
stuff. Now, the
put
other
it
thing I
in the
want to,
general fund.
Jamie, the other thing I want to add with this is, I believe, look, this, how the whole town is struggling.
Yes, oh, absolutely,
And-
I get it.
This
And
is-
even when the first time I discussed it with Jamie, I was like, I understand.
So, by you guys taking this on, it helps. It helps ease some of the burden.
Absolutely.
And it's appreciated.
It's the town's money.
And
Get it?
nobody said that they were against indirect costs.
Correct.
I started the budget process back in December. Alls I need is a note that says, hey, Steve, these are the indirect costs, we anticipate them probably going up by this percentage. The reason I say that is, no, I have no control over it, I'm not gonna lose any sleep over it.
Correct.
But at some point, we have to come to a decision about how we're going to handle rate increases for the next year, if we're going to have them, in order to maintain our budget and have a profit.
I get it, yeah,
So we
you
need
wanna
to
be-
know
yeah.
when those indirect costs You know,
time.
and obviously, health insurance you can't because they don't do it until bloody.
So I think in
so-
Jamie's defense, he doesn't, I mean, he has a vague idea in December, what he's looking at for costs. So I don't think, like, giving you numbers in December when you're starting your budgets.
And to
I'm not
his,
sure that's
to his
something to
credit,
do.
to his
Yeah.
credit, he did a hell of a job with the health insurance.
Yeah.
This year.
And just so that everyone understands, this is an enterprise fund.
Mhm.
In the public sector, if you take money from the general fund to put this from the red to the black, DOR will sit there and say, it cannot be an enterprise fund anymore.
Right.
If you make profit, like they say, that goes beyond a certain percentage, then DOR says you can no longer have it as an enterprise fund.
Mhm.
An enterprise fund is pretty much supposed to be a wash. It
A wash.
pays for,
All right.
that's what the enterprise
That's what I
fund
buy
is
equipment.
statutorily. You can make some money to put it in reserve,
Mhm.
but you can't make an exorbitant profit.
Yeah, well, the enterprise fund, to my understanding, is to generate funds that support itself and to keep itself going.
Correct.
And that's what,
Yes.
that's why we spend the funds at certain amounts of
Right, and
time.
it doesn't come out of taxation.
Because, yeah,
Yeah,
and again, covering our portion, I've said this all along, we've got no argument with that. We just need to have an idea of what it is and when it's coming.
Hey,
And how
I
effective.
agree.
Because let's put it
I
this
mean,
way,
when you
we
do
already
when you get
instituted,
insurance for your
Oh,
employees,
I
you don't
would-
just accept the number from the insurance people.
we already instituted the
I would want
rates.
to know that too.
And the season is live.
100%.
Maybe I would sit there and venture to just say, you know what, whatever your indirect costs are for this year, just pay on that for at least next year, and then go from there.
Yeah.
Because I don't think he
At
even has, I mean, he has an idea,
So are they,
but he's not gonna have a final number that soon. I
Yeah,
think it's later on in the season.
Again, it's adding new ones from year to year, which was the bigger thing to
Right.
me, right? We obviously knew the ones that had been there, you expect an increase in that.
Right.
It's when you add two brand-new ones that no one ever told us was even coming down the line until you get the Excel spreadsheet. It kind of catches us
I
off
think,
guard.
yeah, right, so I think that should be communicated, 100%.
Sure.
You guys should have been aware of that. Now, do they know the percent, like the cutoff as far as you, because you made a comment about an enterprise fund can only generate so much above a certain point.
for example, one of the prior communities I was in, we had an enterprise fund. It was the ambulance enterprise fund. We lost money because they had 4 exits to cover on a very accident-prone highway. And DOR let us take care of the deficit for a couple years. Then they came in and they said, it's no longer an enterprise fund, it's a reserve fund.
Right.
And we had another enterprise fund that was making quite a bit of money, and they had a very large reserve, and they said you either spend that reserve or use it for capital improvements or reduce your rates.
Okay, but I mean, my question is, they should know,
We don't know, it's up to the DOR when they analyze it.
all right, so let's say they made $100,000 in profit and DOR says, well, you made way too much.
So they have to spend it.
They have to either then spend it on capital improvement
Okay, so there you go, guys. So if you make too much money, you're gonna have to buy more equipment.
Do they have an idea what their break even is?
Well,
every year, or-
the thing is,
or it can return to the general fund. It can return to.
how can it return to the general
it-
fund if it never came from there?
It can return,
If you have a profit.
Yeah, but then-
it can return to any stabilization funds through the town meeting process.
So now, I'm not gonna complicate the process, but by knowing what he just mentioned and answering your question about what the percentage is, then you could figure at some point, geez, well, if we're gonna make this much of a percentage and somebody over there in town in another department needs a few extra bucks and we can put it back in their direction, why not? But we don't know
Right.
those two
Yeah.
parameters, so you could never
No,
say.
because most enterprise funds are operated as trying to keep it where
Break even.
it's breaking even plus a little bit.
Yeah.
I know, but in a perfect, I mean, that's,
It's
that might not be, that might be impossible to predict and do.
Welcome to government.
I mean, that's like stupid, in my
Yeah.
opinion.
No wonder government doesn't
Yeah,
work
exactly.
at the state and
Exactly,
federal
that's
level.
stupid. Who comes up with these dumb calculations?
Really?
I mean, these geniuses up there in Boston.
So are there any?
Well, they'd rather not see
I'm kind of
an
glad we talked about
enterprise
this
fund
because
as a
it's kind of
department.
important to
They'd
know.
rather see an
Yeah,
enterprise
We should do our
fund.
ceiling, definitely.
exactly.
No, but they'd rather see an enterprise fund as a town, so to speak, where the state wouldn't have to give us any local aid, and we would be able to operate totally. That's what, look at what they're doing with the education sector. They keep shrinking what the state's giving us, telling us that the towns are going to have to
Well, 'cause-
contribute more and more.
So the other thing is, we're gonna run into this issue once the bond is paid off.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, you
Yeah, but
are.
then we're gonna roll into another bond probably, right?
Then-
Well, maybe
that-
not right
The
away.
building,
No, but then you're going to have
Cast
to,
out.
then you're going to have to figure your rates and the overage and sit with DOR and have DOR determine what you can do to transfer the money for, let's say, the capital needs of the town.
Which we've always discussed too. I mean, when we get to that point where the bond is paid, and if there is significant profit, by all means, if we're above the ceiling, it's the town's money. So, if we're taking
It's
care of
always
the
the
cost,
town's money.
but also keep in mind though, right? Because Steve will throw a number at you with the irrigation. That's going to be
a huge one.
5 years away. 1.5 million. That's coming. So
1.5 million.
if you come and
gets
attack
one-third
the
of golf
enterprise
course.
fund and pull
Right.
it out before it, before it's time,
4.5.
you have to protect the
You
asset.
guys have your own stabilization fund?
We have what they call, what's it
reserve.
called?
they have a reserve, that's $100,000.
Retained earnings contingency fund or whatever.
They have a reserve, they have retained, they have in effect what normally would be called a capital reserve in that. But
I
it's
mean,
not
that's,
called
you
that.
made a good point, I mean, with the irrigation, I mean,
Oh, you've got,
so that would be a major expense, so once they get that bond paid off, if they can put some extra money aside, in case there's an emergency, I think that's probably a good idea. Because you can't just let the golf course go. I mean, this
No.
is an investment in the town, a
it's-
long-term
it's-
investment in the town.
Correct.
It's, not only is it going to be that, you're going to have to look at down the road. If you build a clubhouse, you're going to have to look at the maintenance of that clubhouse beyond the maintenance of Steve's end of the course. You're going to have to look at, do you expand the services on that land? Do you build tennis courts?
Well,
Do you-
I think that's a conversation for another date, but.
No, but I mean, all that is part of it running an enterprise fund.
Right, but.
Well, it's not so much part of running an enterprise fund. What you need to have, and you haven't had initially here, is you need to have a long-term vision. You need to have a master plan
That should be
pulling
part-
you
that-
forward.
I think that discussion
And
should be part of the master
not,
plan.
and you
Yeah.
should have your master plan for the golf course, and and fit that in with what the town, because I understand the town's reviewing its master plan currently.
Does the golf committee actually have like a
Well, it's not so
vision
much.
or goal?
Well, that's
they wanna
the
do?
thing that you have to sit down and discuss. We've been, basically, we've been beating our heads against
Yes,
the wall for
that's
the
where I was
past
gonna go
20-some years, trying
To
to
get
make
here.
money and trying to get to the point now
Yep.
where we're not doing too bad. 2 years, we have the bond paid off, we have some
Right.
money in reserve. We've been able to buy most of the equipment that we've needed, and been able to solve most of the problems we've had.
Eric,
It's
that's the
easy.
wrong question. The question,
Valid question.
the question is the master plan for the whole town. That is part of it.
That's why I say you
can't-
develop the golf. and
Yeah, you
work
can't
in-
have it disjointed.
How much involvement are they having in the master plan? Like, how many is,
I
are
responded
you
to
You're-
guys
you're-
doing anything with the master plan committee?
You're asking the wrong person. I am not involved with it at all.
From the
Well,
chairman?
you can ask.
Well, I mean,
No,
again,
ask the master plan committee.
the person who's coordinating it sent out a survey. I responded to the survey. I think they're gathering their information. And again, I mean, these are interesting and well-founded things to discuss, but we're here for this.
Yes.
So.
And he wants to go home.
Yeah, no,
You know, and people will tell you, one of my pet peeves is wasting time.
Mhm.
Because time's valuable, and my mother said the worst thing about you, son, is you have absolutely no patience.
I'm also the same.
I'm on the same page with you 100%. We're on the clock here.
Yep.
Yes.
Yes, there you go.
You gotta get the pick in here.
You gotta bet your pick it in 5 minutes.
So if you, if we continue this down, pretty much all of our line items remain the same with a few changes in some indirect costs, and we, if you look at capital projects right above the indirect costs, putting that at 84 from 37, and then the principal and interest, the 315 and 315K and the 21K was this year's payment currently.
That was
but-
a placeholder.
Yeah, and then so
Okay.
our actual next payment is the 295.12. So that's accurate, and those are pretty much, you know, it was a pretty straightforward budget. We probably beat it up a little bit more than we had to, obviously, but with good intentions.
You mentioned the capital projects line.
Mm-hmm.
It looks like, I think, the committee had put in for 84,000, and it's.
We had put in for
37.
37,080,
Okay.
the same number that we had this FY.
This coming year.
Okay,
And
okay.
That was, that 84,000 was
That's, I'm just wondering
Suggested.
about- Okay,
as an increase. I don't know exactly why. I don't think it was suggested by the committee when I spoke to Jamie, not this Jamie.
yeah,
Other Jamie.
I think the
She said-
concept
okay,
behind
and
it.
now I
Should leave
see
it there.
it's staying
Yeah.
the same as last year, so there's really no harm, no foul, correct?
Correct.
I mean,
I'm not sure. Is it? Are we gonna do 37 or 84?
Well, that depends on what the Board of Selectmen
Right.
do.
Gotcha. So that's why it's 84.
So I would suggest that the
Oh,
board of
It's
selectmen do
it's the
an accurate
staff's
estimate of what they can do.
recommendation of 84. That gives more flexibility than having to go in and get certain votes on it.
But I agree with what Jamie just said, because it allows you more flexibility in projects that may come up that you can, there's no sense in going back to the Board of Selectmen 15 different times, because I think that after a certain number of times, they get bored seeing you, because they have much more important things to do, so.
But it is
If
in
we can
at-
expedite the
at
process
30.
in some cases.
The
it
town
would
hall
help.
is 37 though, is that what we're going at for,
No,
or
no.
You wanna go with 84? and
You want to
84.
go
chop
for
it
the
back to
committee
80,
request?
37.
Okay.
Oh, we've done, I think that was our staff recommendation to the committee, whereas the 87 was the original, 37 was the original before Town Hall and Steve and Dana got together and talked about it.
Dave?
So two things. One, right, with the capital, we would like to be able to just pay cash for things as needed as they arise, so it gives a little bit more flexibility with that.
Mhm.
And number two, if you take what Jamie said was a placeholder for the debt service, in reality, it's 20 and then about 9, it's about 29,000 is lower is the actual amount there. So if you apply, 29,000 plus the 37, you're getting pretty close to that 84. So it's not, I guess the point I'm trying to say, it's really not like a $50,000 difference between the two, because you got about
The principal and interest.
2026 request column, capital, principal, and interest are incorrect. They're too high.
Yeah.
To the tune of about $30,000. So bottom line is what I'm saying is you knock that down to the 295 and the 12 like it should be, free that money up, you can put in the operating lines up above, and the difference between the 37 and the 84 isn't as dramatic as it looks, is all I'm
Yeah.
trying to say.
I know, yeah, I get your point. So how, is that gonna get recognized that way, or?
It's, as I tell you every meeting, the warrant and the budget are the Board of Selectmen's, and they will present what they present when they present it to
And
the
again,
town
and again,
meeting.
gentlemen, we're scraping, man, we're scraping every single budget as much as we can.
This
Yeah.
is not in the operating budget.
Right.
So it really is looking at it with the indirect costs, which haven't been recognized before, and we're just a couple of generalized lines for indirect cost in the budget. We've broken it out for the first time, and we've started to not only do it here, but you'll see as far as water and sewer, it was broken out. And we're starting to go forward where eventually, once the bonds are paid off, and you might end up with a DOR audit, you've got everything there broken out, and it's a lot,
It's cleaner.
it's a lot cleaner, but it's a lot more advantageous to the town to present something like that. If when DOR 5-10 years from now comes in and looks at it and they see it was done for multiple years.
I agree completely, and we should attribute as much as we can to the enterprise fund, but to say we're not gonna provide an explanation if they ask, I mean, if DOR asks, we're gonna be explaining that to them, so.
Yeah,
we'll see.
well, it's my case, other departments don't have an explanation from the executive.
I know, but we're trying, you have to
Let me
set your
define-
rates to achieve the financial, where your financial obligations are, that's all we're saying. I mean, we're trying to plan the business, and I know you say it's not a business, but we're pretending to be a business.
And we've been going back and forth with this budget right through. I think the reaction is more in the past. They've had town administrators that pull a multi hundreds of thousands of estimates on indirect costs
Yes.
without actually going through and determining the various costs and the various categories. And if that reaction was from, that reaction is to people that are long gone and have less professionalism than the staff now.
You have a question?
I just got one more thing to say. I know Steve wants to get out of here, but
That's all right.
I played golf my whole life. I play at New Brunswick Country Club mainly because it's no tee times and can't get one here. So, but this course is like, for those people that don't golf, it is known in the area as like the best public course.
Oh, yeah.
Forget the fact that it's municipally owned. Just in general, these two guys, I think, have been there since basically day one, right? And
Pretty close.
it's because of you guys. Steve,
No.
Danny, you guys do a great
I'm only as
job.
good as the 17 or so people who
Oh,
work
yeah.
for me. so.
Yeah, but I mean, you're running it, you guys are responsible,
We
you guys
do.
are underpaid for your positions
But
and.
like Steve
you
said,
know.
we do have a lot of residents that work for us, and they take so much pride in this place. I mean,
And that's why we gotta
my
invest
staff,
in it.
Steve-
With the
we're
exception,
walking-
with the exception of the high school kids that I have, most of the people who work for me have been working there for 17,
Yeah.
18 years.
Yeah.
Some 19.
And I'll just say, I mean, you're
And
working
then
out of, you're
retire
working out
before
of
they
an
start.
embarrassment of a building, and, I mean, I think that was supposed to
listen,
be temporary
that's
for a
a
couple of
a
years, right?
Houdini
Like,
operation right
So
there. We
let's
pulled it off.
hope this finally gets done with the.
Because,
housing-
hey, the National
housing.
Golf Foundation pulled me aside. He's like, what you two guys have accomplished here is nothing short of miraculous.
Look, I've said this over the years, and you guys know it. That place is a gem.
Hands
All
down.
I get is positive feedback from a lot of people I know that I come across who play golf. It's one of the best golf courses in the area, and it's a long-term investment for our town. And it's definitely going to need some kind of a clubhouse.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
We're missing revenue there too.
Absolutely,
It's
because it could
ridiculous.
generate
It's
revenue.
ridiculous.
You know, I've played at the back nine in Lakeville. They have a fantastic little place there with the bar, and
Mhm.
you can sit in there and watch TV, get a nice bite to eat. I could envision something like that for our town, and it's going to make some money.
Yep.
So that's you got to think along those lines. So I think ultimately it's going to be a good thing for the town, and you guys do a fantastic job. And-
Appreciate it. Thank you.
And this budget is only, it's a nominal increase compared to some of the other stuff we've seen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'll second that side. You guys don't have to go down there.
So gentlemen, thank you for coming in tonight, we appreciate it. And I missed the mark by 2 minutes.
That's all right.
I missed the mark by 2 minutes.
I've always wondered why we can't have these meetings at 5 o'clock in the morning.
I'm
I mean, if you
asleep
go
at
to-
5 in the morning.
You know, especially down at the golf course, there's nobody there to bother you.
I know, I hear the lawnmower when I get up.
No, with the exception of the deer running by, you know, it's or the coyotes howling and stuff.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for coming in tonight. I think
Thank
we
you. Appreciate it.
got it done
Appreciate
in
your
a
time.
reasonable time.
Appreciate your kind words as well. Thanks.
Absolutely, that's well earned and well deserved.
That was, I don't know, I mean, you guys have, I've never seen a discussion with any type of school that lasted less than an hour. That was pretty
Oh,
much
yeah,
a
that-
achievement.
That was pretty clean.
Well, they come in pretty clean.
Well, I have to, that feller, the principal,
The
he
superintendent.
does a, superintendent?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He does a very well-organized presentation, and he's on the ball.
Yes,
Nice guy to talk to, too.
he is, yep, absolutely.
Well, have a nice evening.
Thanks, everybody.
And also,
Thank you.
and also kudos to the
See you
to the
later.
golf committee as well.
Yes,
Absolutely.
absolutely.
Yeah, can't forget
They're a
Dave.
great group of guys. Thank you.
Absolutely. I forgot, who's, are you the liaison to the
Yeah.
golf? Oh, okay, yeah. Yeah, and then we got, to your question, we have, Pete is on the master plan committee. So if you have any questions about, you know, plans for that, maybe they're talking about it, I don't know, I'm not.
They should be.
Yeah,
Yeah, I would think
There's a
they should have
major
some kind of
component
influence.
in all master plans of open space and recreation.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, it should be, and, you know, now, I mean, it's, the definition of an enterprise fund is there are no funds coming out of taxation.
Mhm.
And who's gonna argue that now? I mean, if somebody wants to complain about something at town meeting, they have the right to, but there's nothing
People don't
there.
understand it, I think. People don't understand how the golf
Well,
course is funded.
it's pretty simple, it's just, you know, an enterprise fund, they're covering all their own costs. It all comes from user fees. So when I pay whatever it is to play golf there, I haven't played in a while. But, you know, that goes to the operation. That's pretty simple, you know, and that's kind of how we'll explain it to the town, but I don't see any major controversy at town meeting.
I understand where they were coming from. It's mainly that I think there was fear there because a
Well,
prior town administrator walked in and said, "Oh, your indirect costs are $250,000."
Yeah, you slapped them with estimates, not actual numbers.
yeah, look, you never want to be blindsided
Yeah.
with something. I think you should always,
They,
you know, have a
the
notice.
staff has been working with them all along with this, as far as what the indirect costs were. Last year, we started the process. This year, we finished it. That's not the case. It's not the case of it being that different. It's just that we keep enumerating more and more on the budget sheet what it is. I mean, the biggest expense is health insurance, like you know. The second surprise to me, one unit cost, is for that building, $5,000 for the liquor liability. And that, just from someone who's been in towns with golf courses, I warn you that the cost will geometrically increase as you have a clubhouse with more use and more liquor sales.
So will the revenue, hopefully.
Well, but I mean, it'll be a geometric because your liability is going to be a lot more. Just so, with all these offsets or indirect cost charges, we were able to offset the insurance, pension, etc. costs, where it was 332,000 and change. It's now, from the operating budget, it's now 144,000 and change. And we were able to take care of that. With the cuts we're looking at, other than culture and recreation, which has a very minor increase, as you know, to keep the certification of the library. Human Services is going to be, on the town side, is less than it was last year. General government very likely will be close or less. Right now, I've got it about 15,000 less, but that, I'm cutting programs. And public safety, right now it looks like it's around $80,000 increase, and that includes with all the collective bargaining costs. Public Works I'm waiting on right now. We're verifying figures, but it's similar. So I just want the committee to know we've gone to the bone and we're chipping pieces off the bone on the town side. You've got 347,000 from Old Colony, and you've got, until they cut, 753,000 from the Acushnet schools. And I'm still at around, the increase is still at around 650,000. The rosiest day, I mean, it might be a little less than that, but 650,000 increase in revenue. So we're looking at somewhere around 200,000 for the joint accounts and the town side, where we're almost in negative numbers in every category. So education is,
We're still contributing to, what was it, a couple hundred to stabilization this year?
You can't use free cash.
No, I mean, we're contributing to the stabilization in this budget, right? Didn't you bring that up last?
Right.
Not from the operating
But we can't use
budget.
free cash to fund the operational budget. So
It's
that free cash that's gonna go into stabilization can't just go towards the operational budget. Because then we'd have to have a whole payback plan with through DOR.
Then how does every other town use stabilization fund in their operating budget?
They don't use stabilization. They might use free cash, but it's very unlikely that they use free cash because 10 years ago you could. 5 years ago you could. Now DOR is coming down on it. But for example, up until recently, you'd put your police cruisers in your operating budget. Now, more and more towns are going back to buying them from free cash as a capital item and keeping them longer than 3 years. And the majority of your free cash is because we haven't filled positions, and those positions are going away in this budget. So you will not get, so you had funded but unfilled positions contributing to the free cash. You won't have that anymore.
But we also have articles to fund as well, which is, that's what that free cash is gonna be utilized for. At the end of the day, there's not gonna be,
OPEB, you're contributing
That's
to
100,
that
right?
from free
is that
cash.
100 into OPEB or 50?
Well, when I got here, you were at about 2 to 3%, and you're going to be up at 8 to 10% of your OPEB liability. But you have, because I can't give you an exact figure because we haven't gone out and had it specifically determined in the last couple of years. But, you know, you've got a very large liability in that, and every time your retiree health insurance goes up, your OPEB goes up. You used a lot of the infrastructure stabilization for Slocum Street. You're going to have to put some of that back. You've got 4 to 5 years from now, you've got a huge bubble of teachers retiring. So you're going to have to put more and more money in your compensated absence stabilization fund because they're talking hundreds of thousands at that point. With, I think they said, and this is 20 plus to 30 potentially. And all of that comes out of free cash. And then you have your capital items. You've got to rewrite your chart of accounts because it's not MAS compatible. You got to buy 2 police cruisers. You've got to update the rest of the COA HVAC system and get that all done. To answer the question you were going to ask.
I'm not going there, Jamie, I'm not going there.
But that's your shelter.
Yep. Is the engine still on the fire engine still on the, or is it getting?
We gotta figure out how to do that. You know, that's a discussion on how you pay for it, how you order it, similar to how we had to do the ambulances, where you authorize the borrowing just to get in the queue to get it. At least a fire engine doesn't take 3 years
Mhm.
from the time you order it to get it, like an ambulance.
Ambulances have more intricate stuff to them.
You've got an awful lot of capital expenses coming down the pipe.
Well, this is why, we have to be fiscally conservative, which we've always been. But now it's even like, ultra fiscally conservative. And again, I'll go back to, part of it's all the irresponsible spending at the state level. Just,
Well, as
that-
I
we have
told
more
you
local aid.
before, the 2.5, your tax levy is really 2.5, 3% depending on new growth. Your local receipts have been going up 5%. Your state aid has, in some years, is as low as 0.5% increase
Mhm.
and has never gone higher than 1.5%. It doesn't, that's where it seriously is a detriment. And like I started talking with Kristen, the fact that DESI wants to bring the town contribution higher and higher and higher, and the state contribution less and less and less for education, doesn't help the balance sheet.
thank God we have Proposition 2.5. Because if we didn't, I mean, just imagine what this governor would do and put on the backs of the taxpayers and how bad it would be. I mean, she's already given the authority for municipalities to raise excise tax at their discretion if they want, I mean, it's just like, just keep taxing people,
Well, I'm a antique, and I actually remember when, prior to 2.5. And then I remember 2.5. And I remember having to lay off half of your workforce,
That was Governor King, wasn't it? That other time?
a little before.
Yeah.
Well, what year were we talking, 70s?
Yeah,
Early 80s.
So late 70s?
late 60s, 70s.
Oh, all right, well, I was thinking of, how bad inflation was when Jimmy Carter was president. I mean, you remember that.
Yeah. Yeah, but I also, and then when 2.5 came in, we didn't have binding arbitration or the JLNC for police and fire, and that came in after that. And I'm really an antique because I remember when the cities and towns ran the welfare system. And that changed in 1968, 69, when Kevin White was elected mayor of the city of Boston and wouldn't give up his Secretary of State's job until the legislature took welfare away from the cities and town and put it with the state.
Okay, I think we can wrap this up.
That's a history lesson you didn't need.
Bottom line, Massachusetts needs a Doge department. Desperately.
That would be fun.
Does anybody have any old business to discuss?
No.
Any new business?
Nope.
You're holding a meeting on the 29th.
I'm gonna get to that right now, right after we approve these minutes. So we have two sets of minutes to approve from September 4th, 2024. In attendance was myself, Sue Delgado, Pete Benoit, Eric Chu, Kristen Flynn, Eric McGlynn, and Bob St. Jean. Do I have a motion?
Motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Next set of minutes is from February 12th, 2025. Hold on. Just pulling it up here, there we go. In attendance was myself, Sue Delgado, Phil Adams, Pete Benoit, Eric Chu, Kristen Flynn. Is there a motion?
Motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, minutes are approved. To Jamie's point, next meeting date
Yeah,
is wrong, is incorrect on
I didn't think we had a time machine that we could go back in time.
Right, so the next meeting,
It's listed the 15th.
yeah, so the next meeting date is next Tuesday, so it's not on a Wednesday, it's next Tuesday, April 29th at 6 PM, not 7 PM. And we're meeting at the police station. So just, everybody make note of that.
Mm-hmm.
Don't come here on Wednesday at 7 o'clock.
We got a busy week next week.
So our only hearing is gonna be with our school department, and that's it. So we have all the information that's been emailed to us to review between now and when we meet, so I think just everybody have, their questions that they want answered, and that way we're not there for 3 hours. That's about it.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned.